very interesting talk coming up from Daniel Rubin. Welcome, Daniel.
Okay. Hey, everyone. So what is the Colorado Public Utilities Commission? Well, some of you may know, it's a regulatory body in Colorado made up of these three commissioners, and it has jurisdiction over a variety of industries in Colorado, like railways, electric, gas. And the state legislature passed a bill in 2021 to modernize the Public Utilities Commission. Part of that is a focus on equity and soliciting a greater diversity of feedback at the commission. So everyone in this room is probably most familiar with biggest electric utility in the state, Xcel Energy. They serve Boulder and Denver. And they have to file all sorts of plans in different types of proceedings before the Colorado Public Utilities Commission. So there are electric resource plans, rate cases, quality service plans, various plans. And I'm going to go over a little bit of each of them. And the hope is that you'll find it more approachable and maybe participate in one. So an electric resource plan is in two phases. In the first phase, the utility is looking at how much energy it thinks it's going to need over the next 5 or 10 years, a resource acquisition period. And it's thinking, how are we going to fill this need through different resources, and how much is it going to cost? And then the second part of an electric resource plan is about the resource, or the request for proposals, and then bidders coming in and bidding their projects, and then modeling those projects to see which will be the best for the utility. Then in a rate case, the utility has built all that infrastructure. Now they need to pass it on to customers in their rates. So they submit data to prove their revenue requirement that they're going to be able to collect through rates. But then there's the phase 2 of the rate case, where they're allocating different parts of the rates to industrial customers, commercial customers, residential customers, and they also implement time of use rates and do little modifiers to each rate. Then once the utilities got generation and all that, they need to be held accountable. So there are quality service plans where they're looking at all sorts of metrics like outages and customer complaints, and there are penalties and charges that might get thrown back to customers on their bill. Then demand-side management and beneficial electrification plans are all about how do we, as a utility, rebate like smart thermostats and high-efficiency lighting and home energy audits and convince people to do those things, because that helps our bottom line as a utility. Clean heat plan is very similar, except focused on how do we transition gas to electricity. So they set these big budgets, and there are a lot more research projects and pilot programs in the clean heat plan. And then these little proceedings that aren't part of the main rate, they need to be able to get that into your customer rate. So they do cost adjustments, like the demand-side management cost adjustment, and little rate riders to make sure that the utility is allowed to pass on their costs to ratepayers. Then, near and dear to Boulder's heart, there's the wildfire mitigation plan, which is where the utility is looking at their infrastructure, distribution substations, feeders, and thinking about a plan to maintain it in the case of a wildfire. Same thing for the power safety shutoff plan, except it's more of a communications plan about how do we communicate to hospitals and key infrastructure if we are going to shut off power to avoid a wildfire. Transportation electrification plans are like setting the intricacies of the charging perks program for your EVs, and also incentivizing more charging infrastructure at businesses and that sort of thing. And then all of these different plans and proceeding types are governed by rules. So there are special proceeding types called Notice of Proposed Rulemakings, or NOPRs, where these rules get argued over, and what sort of documentation is the utility going to have to supply for each proceeding. And then sometimes there are issues that come up that don't fit into a neat category. So there will be a miscellaneous docket, or an M docket. And that's actually what the equity proceeding was from SB 21-272. So all this stuff is relatively simple to follow. You just calendar all of the different proceedings and major deadlines in each, and read the thousands of pages of filings. But really, if you do dial in, and this is a interested and passionate audience, you can submit written comments or show up at a public comment hearing and say your piece, and that really moves the needle in these policy-driving documents. So part of the report at the commission was to get to equity at the Public Utilities Commission, there needs to be outreach about how you participate in these dockets. So I hope that I see some of the people in this audience who are passionate about clean energy participating there. Thanks.
So Daniel, I got a couple of questions, but I understood everything that you said, which worries me a bit. So that was really cool. Are there any commissioners here?
I don't think so.
Well, they're not going to admit it at this point. So a couple questions. So one is get together with Phil and get a magic button for the PUC proceedings, because they look really complicated to me. Noper, I love Noper. You guys, how many of you get power from Excel in here? So most of you. How many of you know that you're on a TOU rate? Uh-oh. So you're on a TOU rate. So unless you called Excel and said, don't put me on a TOU rate, anybody do that in here? Excel, I don't want to be on a TOU rate. Nobody? So about 60% of you don't know you're on a TOU rate. What's a TOU? Anybody not know what a TOU rate is? See, this is why we have a lot of work to do, right? Time of use rate. So anyway, look at your bill. It's really simple. You showed one up there. Did you notice that? It's only got like 37 line items. They share a customer experience system with Frontier Airlines. I'm so mean. I love Excel. They're my favorite local utility.